This is another archival upload of some of my previous mix critique videos. I apologize for the vertical format that this video is about to switch to. This is 336 to 340. This mix was sent in by Ryan. There's a journey that takes us all through. Biggest problem so far, everything's drowning in reverb. You gotta bring that down, or at the very least, you gotta carve out some of the low mids out of the reverb because it's making everything super muddy. Dude, you're clearly using reverb as a crutch because you know your guitar tone doesn't sound that great. Like, you can't just drown everything in reverb and think that that's gonna make everything better. Like, you need to actually get things right at the source. So the guitars, you gotta make sure that they're actually in tune when you're recording them. You also gotta make sure that they're full in the low mids and the mid range so that they don't sound super thin and empty. Also, we're like almost a minute into this and there's no drums yet, so what's up with that? Oh, I see why you waited so long to bring the drums in. Dude, okay. Clearly programmed drums. Clearly not programmed by anyone that knows how to play drums. If there's even cymbals in there, you can barely hear them, but it's just like the most bare bones kick and snare pattern. It's not even remotely like anything that a real drummer would play. It's way too empty. The drums don't sound good. It sounds like you just compressed the shit out of them. Like, you were probably using samples that were already pretty well compressed, and then you just compressed them more, and you've taken all the life out of the drums. Dude, just hire a drummer to write your drum parts. This mix was sent in by Eric. All right, so far I think you have a little too much buildup in the sub frequencies. Like, it almost sounds muddy, but it doesn't really sound like low mid. So I'm assuming you just have way too much low end buildup. I don't have a sub in here, so I'm not gonna hear like super low frequencies really well. But generally when I'm hearing what I'm hearing here, it's just a massive buildup of sub frequencies. So you gotta work on that. Actually, no, it's not really a buildup of sub-frequencies. Like, you do have a little too much at like 50 hertz compared to everything else, but really it's like you have a lot in the low mids and then you're just completely lacking top end. That's why it doesn't really sound like a buildup of low mid frequencies, because the low mids are pretty well balanced, but then you're completely missing top end. The vocals are coming through a little bit in the like 3 to 5K range. Other than that, you have like nothing above 500 hertz, and it feels really empty. It feels really dark. I don't know if you over EQ'd things or if you just didn't do the arrangement well enough and you didn't have anything with like upper mid frequencies and high frequencies when you actually produced the track. But like, if you cut a bunch of top end out of stuff, then you need to add that back in. But more likely, I think just in the production stage, you just didn't record anything with any top end information. So you got to go back to the drawing board with this and like arrange it better from the beginning. This mix was sent in by Cody. Mama said don't leave the house until you've done your job. All right, honestly, the drums, the bass, and the vocals all sound pretty good overall. Definitely have a little bit too much reverb on there though. You got to dial that back. It's overpowering some things. It's making it a little muddy. At the very least, EQ some of the low end and the low mids out of the reverb so that it's not making everything muddy. So far, the biggest problem for me is the guitar tone. It's a little muddy. It's lacking some top end. It just sounds really lackluster and muddy, and it's just kind of killing the track for me. But honestly, if you improve the guitar tone and dial back the reverb a little bit, this is probably gonna sound pretty good because the drums and the bass and the vocals sound pretty good already. Overall, it's not bad. You definitely need some mix bus compression to make everything gel together a little bit more and to like enhance the existing energy in the track. But the biggest things for me is just there's way too much reverb and I don't like the guitar tone. You got to fix the guitar tone. Guitar tone also definitely needs to come up in the mix a little bit. Vocals could probably come up in the mix a little bit, but like, you have a pretty good starting point here. It's the details, man. Like, not bad overall, but it could definitely be improved. This mix was sent in by Brian. First things I'm noticing, you definitely got some phase issues. Part of that is because you're using a flanger on the guitar, but if you had actually double tracked the guitar and had one on the left and one on the right, it would sound a lot fuller despite what the flanger is doing to the tone of the guitar. The guitar also sounds really thin. You definitely cut way too much low end out of the guitar. The drums sound decent so far. The bass sounds pretty good so far, but the biggest thing for me is the guitar tone. man, I mean, it's not bad overall. It's kind of your typical jam bandy type sound. Really, the biggest issue for me is just that guitar tone. Like I said, there's clearly phase issues, which part of that is the flanger you have on it. You probably also have a phaser on it, which obviously by definition causes phase problems. But I think if you had double tracked that guitar, it would have filled it out a lot more. Other than that, you've also just really over EQ'd the guitar. You've cut out a ton of mid-range, and it's making the whole track feel a little bit empty, even though the drum sound is pretty solid and the bass sound is pretty solid, and you have like a pretty tight low end. It just feels like it's missing something in the mid-range, and that's just because of everything you cut out of the guitar. This mix was sent in by Aaron.
I don't know why they're laughing. Spinning.
Yeah, I was gonna say the vocals are clipped to fuck in the very beginning, but then they stopped, so I'm gonna assume that that was an intentional effect.
I don't know why they're laughing.
Your overall EQ is kind of all over the place, and it's really bizarre. And the whole beginning section, it felt like the upper mids were actually lacking a little bit. It felt like you had a really full mid-range, a decently full low end, and there was a lot of stuff like spiking up around 10K and up, but that like 2.5 to like 7, 8K area felt like it was lacking. And then we got to that spot where it was just the guitar, and then the whole top end felt really full, but the whole low end felt like it was gutted all of a sudden. And then the vocals came back in and it rounded out really, really nicely. That part that just played, that felt the fullest and what the EQ pretty much should be overall. But from section to section, your EQ is kind of all over the place. You got to find a way to balance those out, even if it's a matter of like chopping up the track and putting different EQs on different sections to balance it a little bit more. Now, like, it's creating movement, so you don't want to overdo that. You don't want to completely kill the individuality of each section, but it definitely needs to be a little bit more balanced than it currently is.